Welcome, welcome everyone to this gathering of hearts to which anyone is welcome. And this week we didn't send out an announcement using our eye contact and newsletter, although a newsletter went out and mentioned it. But should anyone wonder where to get the link, and all of you on here must know how to get to the link, but to tell anyone else, just go to Sufism.org. And on the banner, there will be a banner for our weekly gathering. Click on that, it'll lead you to the link. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We ask the help of Allah and our Pir Mevlana in this and in everything we do. And we bring our finest attention to our breath with gratitude. Breath by breath awareness. La ilaha illallah. Breathing out La ilaha. Emptying ourselves of all idols, all distractions, all preoccupations, and coming back to Allah. Only you, Allah, only you, our beloved God, whose help we seek, whose love we need, on whom we are utterly dependent and in need. Help us to recognize that need. Help us to turn to you. Help us to be grateful for the grace that flows from you and never stops, no matter how negligent or distracted we are. That grace never fails. God says, I am in you. Where are you? Are you here? Are you here? La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha. And inshallah, we're centered in the heart, our center of gravity, moves from the head to the heart with each breath, affirming the presence of the heart in intimacy with God, directing the eye of the heart toward our divine source, breath by breath. Oh, our beloved friend, allow us to be emptied, allow us to be cleared, to be washed clean, in order to open our hearts more fully to you. La ilaha illallah. And now silence on the out-breath and a silent illallah, only God, on the in-breath. Silence on the out-breath and illallah, silently on the in-breath. And now in this state of deeper presence, we can truly say that we wish for the health and well-being of everyone on this call, and your families, friends, your communities, for the grace and protection of God. And through the prayers of these sincere lovers who pray for each other, We will get through everything we need to get through. We will learn that our provisions have been sent forward, that we will participate in creating a new world, inshallah, bringing our values and the beauty of what we love into manifestation. And finally, we'll end with a single who. Bismillah. Ameen. Camille has something she'd like to share with us.
May I use this? Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We awoke this morning to a beautiful dawn, beautiful light, reminding us again of the theme for this month and all the light that is gifted by our sustainer day after day. And reminded of the beautiful surah of the glorious morning light, Aduha, which arrived through the heart of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in a moment when there had been, it is said, a pause in the revelation, and then this beautiful surah arrived, reminding us of the arrival of the light and this dance of dark and light that manifests throughout creation, and yet the awareness that our sustainer is always with us, guiding us. In the name of God, the infinitely compassionate and infinitely merciful, by the glorious morning light, and by the night when it is still and dark, your sustainer has not forgotten you, nor is she displeased with you. And truly, that which comes after will be better than that which came before. And soon your sustainer will give you that with which you will be content. Didn't he find you an orphan and shelter you? Didn't he find you wandering and guide you? Didn't he find you in need and satisfy your need? So do not be harsh with orphans, nor turn away someone who asks something of you, but continually declare the blessings of your sustainer. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Waduha Waleli Vasacha. Mawaduka Rabbuka Wamakala. Walala Kiratu Khairulaka Minalula. Wala sofa yutika rabuka fatorda. Alam yajirku yatiman fa'awa. Wawachadka dalan fahada. Wawachadka ilan fa'adna. Famali yatima fala takar. Wa amma sayla fala tanhar. وأما بنعمة ربك فحديث صدق الله العظيم. آمين.
So, friends, the theme for April is your inner being is a sanctuary. Cleanse it with the light of compassionate awareness. I've also been saying that during this time, our homes can be sanctuaries of light if we remember to increase our remembrance, increase our prayer. It's said in the beautiful hadith that the difference between one who remembers God and one who doesn't is the difference between the living and the dead. So this remembrance of Allah brings us life, brings light into our hearts, and sanctifies both our inner being and the space around us and our relationships. The very space we inhabit is transformed by those who remember. And at this time, our homes are the tekya, the dergah, the masjid, the Kaaba. Perhaps some of you have seen that incredible picture of the Kaaba with a single cleaning person, completely empty. Well, these are extraordinary times, aren't they? There's a passage in the Mesnevi, and it's in book 4, approximately lines 2881 and following, but the parts I'm going to read are, well, at the very beginning and at the very end, far beyond 2881, but I'll start at 2881. Mevlana says, does any artist paint for the sake of the picture itself without the hope of offering some good? No, but for the sake of the viewers and the young who will be drawn by it and freed from cares? Or does any potter hastily throw a pot or a bowl without any thought of what it will hold? Does any calligrapher write for the script alone without any regard for the reader? The external form is for the sake of something unseen, and that took shape for something else unseen. Just as the moves in a game of chess reveal the results of each move in what follows, they make one move to conceal another move, and that for something else, and so on and on and on. So move on, aware of reasons within reasons, one move after another. One step is for the sake of another, like the rungs of a ladder to reach the roof. The hunger for food produces semen. Semen is for procreation, and the light in the parent's eyes. Someone with dull vision sees no further than this. His or her intelligence has no movement. It vegetates. Whether a plant is summoned or not, it stays planted within the soil. Don't be deceived by the wind that bends it. Its head says, "We obey the zephyr's request," while its feet say, "Leave us alone." Since he does not know how to move, he advances on trust like the blind. Consider what acting on trust means in a war. It's like a gambler trusting the throws of the dice. I'm reading more than I planned to read. I'm reading the whole passage for continuity, so I'll continue. But if someone's sight is unfrozen, it penetrates the veil. He or she sees with their own eye in the present what will come to pass in 10 years' time. In the same way, everyone perceives the invisible future, whether good or bad, according to the measure of his or her insight. When the barriers in front and behind are removed, the eye penetrates and reads the tablet of the unseen. When he or she looks back to the origin of existence, the beginning and all the past display themselves, including the argument between the angels of earth and the divine majesty, their resistance to recognizing our father Adam as God's steward. And when he or she casts their eye forward, they see all that will come to pass until the final gathering. Therefore, he or she sees back to the root of the root and forward to the day of reckoning. Anyone to the degree of his or her enlightenment sees as much as he or she has polished of themselves. The more we polish, the more we see. The more visible do the forms become. If you say purity is by the grace of God, this success in polishing is also through that divine generosity. That work and prayer is in proportion to the yearning. And here a quote from the Quran: people have nothing but what they have striven for. Okay, so far we're being reminded of the possibilities of polishing, of being able to see more clearly. And of course, in today's situation, there's so much we don't know. But this expansion of our horizons, this reminder of the distant past and the day of recognition, enlarges our context. And spirituality is essentially the widening of our context to the greatest possible extent. Mevlana continues, God alone is the giver of aspiration. No rough brute aspires to kingliness, nor does God's gift of good fortune preclude one's own consent and will and choice. In other words, we're told so often, we will receive nothing but what God has intended for us. Mevlana is reminding us that our consent and will and choice is also part of this. But when God brings trouble upon some ill-fated person, he ungratefully runs away in flight. Whereas when God brings trouble upon a blessed person, he or she just draws nearer to God. And here's the most precious part of this whole reading. In battle, the cowardly, from fear of their lives, have chosen their means of escape. But heroes are borne forward by their fear and pain. From fear, too, the weak soul dies within itself. From fear, too, the weak soul dies within itself. Tribulation and fear for one's life are touchstones to distinguish the cowardly from the brave. So Mevlana is reminding us that none of us is free of fear, moments of uncertainty, moments when we don't know what the right choice may be. But these conditions make heroes of some. I hope we can use these conditions to strengthen our souls, to bring forth new qualities in ourselves and in our service, in our relationships. Someone was talking, and forgive me for bringing up the Black Plague, which was a truly dreadful pandemic that killed somewhere between 1.25 of the population of Europe, and certainly included the Middle East as well. It was interesting for me to realize that Aflaki, the great chronicler of Mevlevi lore, who Camille drew upon for her book Rumi and His Friends,
Stories of the Lovers
of God, which was written by Aflaki. And what probably none of us realized was that Aflaki lived through the Black Death. That work was completed in 1353, and the plague was in 1340s. So challenges have come and gone, and this is certainly not the Black Plague, but nevertheless it's brought so much of life to a standstill. It's like a stop exercise. I don't know if we've discussed the stop exercise. It's something that's used in esoteric training, where the sheikh, the teacher, will simply, suddenly, in the midst of some activity like cooking in the kitchen, the sheikh will say in a very loud, definite voice, "Stop." And everyone is obliged to freeze in whatever posture they are, in taking a snapshot, as it were, of their thought, their state at that moment. In order to break the unconscious momentum of our action, of our thought, in order to come into presence, in order to recollect. So this pandemic is like a stop exercise for humanity. And people seem to be getting the message. I haven't spoken too much about all the obvious lessons that are being taught, because I see that pretty much people from on the whole spectrum, from deep spiritual seekers to everyday people and people who have been involved in business and the military and politics, pretty much are getting the same message. It's a message about the unity of humanity, about the pause in everything we've been doing that affects nature and the environment, about the possibilities opening up from just being at home and having time with our loved ones, if we're gifted with such company, and not everybody is. Humanity is undergoing a great, gigantic stop exercise for the moment. And so we have this extraordinary gift to reflect. And what came to my mind is something from Shams of Tabriz and the Makalat, from Camille's work, Rumi's Son. You will find this passage, and it has the title, Remember to Ask. He begins, for the sake of God's pure and exalted existence, for God's Most High's pure self, those people also learned about that at the madrasa. And here he's quoting, let's learn about wisdom and establish ourselves at such and such a madrasa, they said. Now here we're talking about a madrasa, but we could be talking about a university, we could be talking about a corporation, we could be talking about any social organization. Shams continues, one should weigh such moments carefully. In this group, they're always talking about this. They say, let's gain such and such a position. Let's quickly become famous. Why should one seek knowledge for the sake of a morsel from this world? What is the use of an education that doesn't teach who I am, what my essence is, why I have come here, where I will go, and where I have come from? These people who study in the religious schools do so for the sake of fame and obtaining teaching positions. They say that one must do beautiful deeds. They declare this in these gatherings to gain status. Why do you learn for the sake of a worldly morsel? This rope of divine wisdom, is for the sake of climbing out of this well, not for the sake of falling from this well into another. And now here's the most important part. Bind yourself to these questions. Who am I? And what is my essence? Why have I come here? And where am I going? Where am I rooted? And what am I involved in right now? and towards what must I turn my face? These essential questions, which I would propose that would be really useful to memorize these. Make them part of your inner world. Who am I and what is my essence? Why have I come here and where am I going? Where am I rooted? And what am I involved in right now? And towards what must I turn my face? How will we even answer these questions? I think fortunately, those of us who have a spiritual practice, those of us who are doing the work of being and not just involved at the level of intellectual questioning, will have a better chance of answering these questions. And those of you who are doing the work of the heart, of purifying the heart and of learning to see through the eye of the heart, will also have a better chance of being able to answer these questions. Because if we turn these questions into an opportunity for just intellectual analysis and comparison and speculation, we won't get as far as if we can ask these questions from our very essence within the consciousness of our own being. So take, for instance, who am I and what is my essence? Many of us have had so many moments of stillness and silence together, where we have drawn our consciousness back behind our thoughts, far behind our contradictory emotions and desires, and back to the source of consciousness itself. And you can do this. This is not just for some rare human being who retires to a mountaintop or a cave. We have to do this. To trace something back to the root of our consciousness until we come to that state, that condition of relative silence, of relative peace, of relative stillness. Who am I? What is my essence? Why have I come here? Where am I going? Here the heart comes into play. There are certain things we can only know through the heart, because the heart is the instrument for sensing value and meaning. The heart is our lens into our portal, into a world of qualities. It's the heart that can begin to inform us about why we have come here and where we are going. And where am I rooted? So many of the teachings of our tradition remind us again and again to trust in the divine, to awaken to the fact that we are loved and held and guided by an infinite and loving intelligence. That each of us, if we could awaken to what Rumi calls the root of the self, we'll begin to know that we are sourced. Our consciousness is sourced in the divine presence. Whatever positive qualities we have, our awareness, our compassion, our courage, our generosity, our patience, all of these are rooted in that divine source. And then the question, what am I involved in right now? And towards what must I turn my face? We must ask these questions in the midst of our activities, our work, our relationships. And we've been given this gift, a time to reevaluate and perhaps to see, for the heart to see, what were we doing before all of this? What were we spending the substance of our life on? What were we expending our breaths for? Your inner being is like a sanctuary. Cleanse it with the light of compassionate awareness. At the end of Salat, the ritual prayer that many of you practice, it's at the end of the ritual worship that the best opportunity for dua, for supplicatory prayer comes. It's then after we have offered our reverence to the divine, after we have broken the momentum of our normal activity, to draw deeply and to prostrate and to disappear in the beautiful oblivion of the prostration, and then return to ourselves, kneeling and prostrate again and stand and go through these cycles, beautiful cycles of ritual, of dynamic prayer. It's at the end of that we're in a beautiful state to have a dialogue with our Lord and to ask for what we truly need. And Mevlana tells us something interesting. He says that when the servant enters into prayer, God in secret says, Amen, Amin. When the servant enters into prayer, Allah secretly says, Amin, to his servant's prayer. And with that Amin, he grants a sweet taste of holiness in your prayer. And he makes the one who prays inwardly and outwardly sweet. Sweet like a fig, Mevlana says. The fig has a symbolic value too. It's been compared esoterically as in Watini wa Zaytuni. Watin, the fig, is like an analog of the human brain. So that sweetness enters into our cellular structure at the deepest level. And it also enters into the character of the person who is regular in prayer. The person who prays because he or she recognizes our absolute need for this communion with the divine. And in prayer, we also say so many times, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. How often do we say Allahu Akbar without really grasping the power of this Allahu Akbar? Again, Mevlana tells us, pronounce the Allahu Akbar over your ego, your carnal self, your false self, and make that your sacrifice. Pronounce Allahu Akbar with your heart and be willing to sacrifice the false self in order that the heart might live. Your inner being is like a sanctuary. Cleanse it with the light of compassionate awareness. That light is the divine light of remembrance, and it is compassionate. Be compassionate with yourselves. All of us have been heedless, negligent. We have our mistakes, we have our sins. I'm moved by a story in the Mesnevi. Maybe you know it, the story of the old harper. The old harper, musician, and who says, for 70 years I've been committing sin, yet not for one day have you withheld your abundance from me. I earn nothing. Today I am your guest. I'll play my harp for you. I am yours. It's a mercy that Allah accepts our prayer, even with all our shortcomings, even with all our negligence. And in prayer and through remembrance, may we attain that sweetness that Mevlana tells us about. Yes, even in this time of pandemic, in this universal stop exercise, in the uncertainty of our present and future, we keep in mind, again, Shams's word. And what am I involved in right now, and towards what must I turn my face? So, dear friends, it's so beautiful that we're all together. And I learned how, after Camille and I signed off last week, how most of you continued for another 23 minutes until Saima shut the call down. Sorry, we missed that communion. Maybe we'll hang out with you for a little while. Camille?
Shall we close with a
Yes. Bismillah, Yahu. Ameen, 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 and Salam Alaikum.